Talk Radio, where the truth is usually stranger than fiction. The purpose of these shows are not to scare you, but to prepare you, because what you don't know could hurt you. The word says in Hosea 4:6, "My people are destroyed for the lack of knowledge." Thank you for joining us. My name is Julie, and here is the host of the show, Barry Meyer.
Hi, this is Joe Dan Gorman of Intellectual Frog Legs. Ain't no liberals say I have every phobia out there. They say I'm a homophobe, an Islamophobe, even a Michelle Obamophobe. Well, actually, I am kind of scared of her. So, with all these fruitcake phobias, I'm bound to be on my last leg. So you probably ought to hurry on over to intellectualfroglegs.com. See what Chuck Woolery's calling the best new media he's seen. That's intellectualfroglegs.com.
Welcome to End Time Talk Radio. Been gone for a little bit here. But I just got back from a little trip. My wife and I, we like to kind of go up to the mountains and do some fishing and different things and ATVing. And up there about 100 miles west of Cheyenne here. And I came across an old cabin back there that's still usable, so you can hook your generator up in that. The idea that I'm bringing this up is that because there are so many trees now from the pine beetle kill, we have to bring chainsaws with us just to get through. And with that being said, there's a lot of fires that are happening. Today is June 11th of 2013, and right now they have fires in Black Forest, Colorado, which is north of Colorado Springs, also Estes Park, and down there by the Royal Gorge. And so right now the hunt to Colorado today was 109 degrees. Myself going home from work was 94 degrees. So things are definitely happening. That I think they're going to have a great show tonight on preparedness. So being prepared. Also wanted to mention. That there's also a mega church leader down in Texas that is has a partnership now with Muslim Brotherhood. And so, things are happening. You definitely want to make sure that the pastor you're with is one who stands for constitutional rights, one who stands from the Word of God, and one who trusts that, he trusts in Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior and doesn't just put any hope in just on a man, but puts his hope in Jesus Christ. Now, if you do want to check out some stuff that I've done for fun, because I don't just work and also do a radio show, but we have some fun, you can go to Barry/Julie/adventures.blogspot.com, and you can also check out the new site at Barry/Julie-blogspot.com. Anyways, tonight we have Brian Britton. Now, he's down in Greeley, Colorado, and he's been going to the church I go to. Down there at Destiny Christian Center. You definitely want to make sure you pick up the books In Defense of a Nation and America in the Bible by Stephen and also Stan Grant. Now, Brian has a website called the Greely 912 Project. That's actually, the website is greely912.net. Now, it's talking about holding politicians accountable, and it's a perfect time having Brian on tonight, especially what's going on with Colorado with 8 counties now talking about going into the 51st state. Brian, welcome to End Time Talk Radio.
Thank you, Barry. I appreciate it. Sounds to me by your introduction that you and I share a lot of the same ideas about going up in the mountains and going to the cabins, and you're absolutely correct with the heat that we're seeing right now and the dryness caused by the pine beetles, that we are going to see more forest fires. We saw a lot last year that burned up a large area of northern Colorado. And I, too, have a cabin up in the mountains that my wife and I spend a lot of time at. And, there again up there, we have a lot of pine beetles around the area. Fortunately for us, I bought away from the forest, because knowing that those forest fires, once they get going, they can jump, across canyons. And those fires that we saw, the one we experienced last year, I think it was the Hyde Park fire. If you go into that area, the ground almost turned to glass, because those fires can be so intense. And you really learn the the way nature functions, and that we're really kind of small when it comes to dealing with the forces of nature. So yeah, you and I share a lot of the same ideas, it sounds like.
Yeah, we'll have to definitely maybe do a camping trip together. I think that would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it would be.
We'll have to plan on that. We'll just talk here on the phone, and we'll get something going. Brian, can you have people share a little bit about your background, because you're a concealed carry instructor and some other things? Maybe just mention a few things.
Sure. What I do is I train people in the Colorado area, northern Colorado, on helping them to get their concealed carry permit. I train them with the use of pistols. I will be learning more on training people with, or be able to train people on the use of rifles and shotguns. The other things I train people on is hand-to-hand, open-hand type combat for self-defense, and also from open-hand to lethal weapons. And what I mean by lethal weapons is anything from baseball bats to knives to guns. And one of the things that really surprises people is when I tell them that a knife is actually more lethal than a gun. And if you ever get a chance to take one of those kind of classes, you'll learn why. Because knives, they're deadly at about 90% of the time, where pistols are only deadly at about 60% of the time. So, that adage is don't bring a knife to a gunfight. You might be better off.
Yeah, I could definitely see that point. I never really thought about it that way, but especially, with a knife, you could really let someone know that you would have one, and when you got close combat, you could definitely jam, where with a gun you could miss.
Well, not only that, by the time you get it out of your holster, you're in trouble.
Yeah.
If somebody has a knife. But, a little bit more about my background is I grew up in western Colorado. My father was quite an outdoorsman, and so was my grandfather. So we spent a large amount of our weekends and our vacations in the backwoods. Believe it or not, we still camped in tents, and they taught me a lot about how to get along with what little they had, because, my grandfather grew up during the Depression, so he taught me a lot about getting by with a garden. And we look back in the days when we used to go and laugh at my grandmother because she would make hats out of Clorox bottles. We would laugh at that, but kind of in retrospect, and said, that really kept the sun off of her back. And they were really good at taking things that you or I or anybody today would throw away and utilize. And Barry, that is really what preparation is all about. Is taking things that you feel that are useless or may not be of any, that you just don't see of any need. And you know what? People these days can find a need for them because, as far as preparation goes, you may need those things someday. So the best thing to do is, even if you end up throwing it away, try to figure out how you can use something. And that's one of the big things I learned from my grandparents.
Brian, I have how would I say, when I see somebody throw something like at work away, I'll actually, if it's usable, I'll take it. And one of the examples is 2x4s. Sometimes at my job, things will come in crates and 2x4s and stuff, and I'll actually just take it home and break it down and keep the 2x4s, only because, hey, that's a cheap way of having lumber. But people do throw a lot of things away without thinking, without they could use it again. I think the Clorox bottle is a good idea.
What's funny about that is one of the first tables my wife and I ever had, I made it out of a packing crate from an X-ray machine. Mm-hmm. And, typical of me, everything I do is always over-engineered. It worked as a coffee table for a while, then it worked as a park bench, and then it actually worked as a stool. So there was something that I could use for all kinds of different ideas. So yeah, you're absolutely correct there. There are uses for. We've become a throwaway society,
yeah.
And that's part of the problem. Is we're filling the landfills up with stuff, and I'll give you another example. Look how many of us throw away paper. Mm-hmm. And one of the people in our 912 group, we taught them how to make burnable bricks out of their newspapers. And they make these little bricks, and you can take them and put in your fire and burn them just like you would wood. So they're stacking those up if they ever need them.
Yeah, and that's true. One of the things my wife and I, we find very feasible for us is actually hitting garage sales. I've actually found military boots for $. I mean, and good ones, too, that have not been used. People just don't realize what they're throwing away.
And I was talking to Pastor Steve one day, and he said, you know what I found at a garage sale? I found a hand coffee grinder. And you know what? You go online, you're talking $100 for one of those things. I think you paid $6 for it.
Yeah, you can't beat
I
that.
asked him if he'd sell it.
But, you know, it's true. You know, if you spend the time just on a Saturday morning and just looking through the paper and see what's out there and map it out, it's amazing. There's sometimes. But you know what, though? I've actually picked up guns without having to have any paper trail because, you know, someone was selling it.
And at garage sales, and, you know, you see them on you know, there's Rocky Mountain Gun Owners has a site that you can pick up from guns from other people, owners. That's a good way to get your firearms. And plus, also, they'll give you good training on how to you know, clean them and take care of them. That's the other thing. When I teach my classes, I spend a lot of time with people just teaching them how to maintain their firearm. Because I've seen some firearms in all kinds of situations. So, I'm also finding, Barry, that a lot of people that I'm training today, they may have been around firearms when they were younger, haven't been around them for years, and they're now coming to the classes and taking away from the class, a new use for their firearms. I like to say that I don't train people how to shoot. I train gunfighters. And that's the focus I come up with is, there are shooters, and they spend time shooting paper, and they have specific rules. I train gunfighters, and they're trained how to defend themselves and their loved ones, and they learn how to move. They learn how to, manage situations, not have the bad guys manage them. So if I can accomplish that in one of my classes, that is really what I am trying to do. And I train men, I train women, and it's amazing when these women, when their motherly instinct kicks in, because I put them in a situation. One of the things I do is I'll sit there, we'll come together, me and this other person, and say, okay, you got to think of a what really would set you off. Now, when we get to these other training scenarios, you have to get to that zone, because you're going to have to go over that threshold that says, I'm not a social person now. I'm very antisocial. And, I mean, when we're talking about shooting, when we're talking about gunfighting, we are talking about the ultimate level of violence. And, some people can't go there. But you get somebody in the right frame of mind, they'll go there. Yeah. And this is all just part of, when we say preparation, that's just one phase of it. The gunfighting. And I kind of like to tell people about David and Goliath. I know Steve and Stan, especially Stan on his site in Defense of the Nation, they've been talking a lot about David and Goliath. What do you think about David? He went through years and years of preparation on how to use a slingshot. Yes. And at the time, that was state-of-the-art technology. So, I kind of look at it and say, David, he's a gunfighter. He prepared for that. If you read the Bible and you go through some of these heroes that we have in the Bible, and start to look at them as how did God prepare them, and for what did He prepare them for? Another example I use, the ultimate prepper that I'd like to call is probably Noah. Yeah. Look at what he had to do. We look at it and we say, well, did God, why did God make Noah do it? Well, God made him prepare. He had to prepare by building a boat. People laughed at him. You know what? People laugh at preppers today too. But then that gets down to, Okay, what are you preparing for? I don't know how many people watch, that, what is that prepper show on TV. I got to understand. I got rid of my television about a year ago because I just got too many real things I got to do.
Yeah, we haven't watched so much ourselves. Yeah, I know what you mean. I ran into a county commissioner here in Laramie County, Wyoming, and last weekend, and we were talking, and of course he's Tea Party, and so hey, I'm a supporter of you and stuff. We're talking and stuff, and he said, if people don't realize it, people are going to go and kill people for a loaf of bread here soon. I mean, soon could be a year from now, or longer, who knows. But when things really hit the fan, Brian, it's going to be a scary situation because desperate people do desperate things.
Well, especially in those situations. And you know what, Barry? A lot of that scares people, and it scares them to paralysis.
Yes.
Okay? Let's just take a little step back, and let's not try to scare people. Let's give ourselves reasons to prepare. For instance, what am I preparing for? I don't like to say that I'm preparing for the zombie apocalypse. No, what I prepare for is I basically have two ideas: short-term and long-term preparation. And I'm gonna look at things that are real and could really happen. Okay, you get laid off from your job.
Yes.
What better time to have food, stored up, so that maybe maybe you get laid off your job and you can only find a part-time job. Well, you know what? You still have food set aside. What if you're disabled, or somebody in your family gets disabled, or somebody else loses their job? I mean, that's happened with my family, and I tell my family, I say, well, come over to the stores and get what you need. And so that's short term. And are these things that can happen? Absolutely. The other one is long term. People go out and who out there these days does not have life insurance? Who doesn't have auto insurance? Who doesn't have health insurance? Does that mean that I expect that I want to be unhealthy? Does that mean that I want to have a car wreck? Absolutely not. But you buy insurance. Mm-hmm. So why not have food insurance? Why not have, this policy sitting down in your basement or in another room that says, I've got this insurance policy. Okay, for what? How about retirement? Don't tell me that we're not going to have inflation. We got $17 trillion in debt. Anybody knows a little bit about economics knows that when that money really starts hitting the, out into the public, we're going to have inflation. So why not store up food while you can afford it? Because if inflation happens, which it has in the past and it will again, you may not, if you're on a fixed income, you're retired, you may not be able to afford it. Who wants to eat cat food? Who wants to eat dog food? While you're working, store some food up so that you have something downstairs ready to go.
I know. Even having even some little 1 ounce whiskey is kind of nice because it's a good barter.
Well, excellent barter. I hate to say this, but whiskey and cigarettes, they're great bartering tools. There's always going to be those people that got to have it.
Yeah.
I was talking to Stan the other day. I said, and we said, what you ought to have? You probably ought to learn how to run a still.
Yeah.
Well, 'cause I can barter. One, I can make alcohol for, bartering. I can make alcohol for medical purposes and for cleaning purposes. Plus also, like my wife was saying the other day, that a lot of these essential oils that you get from herbs have to be distilled.
Okay.
So, maybe a still's not a bad idea. When you start to take it out of the context of where you usually see them, the old Kentucky stills, well, if you take it out of that context, say, oh, you mean I can make essential oils if I had a still? Yeah, you can. So, but here again, how many of us know how to run a still? I probably, first time I did it, I don't know what I'd end up with. I'd probably end up with just a still full of nothing. But, it takes practice. And that's another thing that preppers, people who are getting prepared, have to do is they got to practice, take themselves out of that comfort zone and practice skills that they have never done before. Gardening. I mean, I got to tell you, my gardening skills were not really the best, But last year I had one tomato plant that took over the whole garden, provided us with tomatoes all summer and well into the fall. Don't ask me what I did. It had to do with the manure I put in there, I'm sure. But, the point I'm getting at is that you get better and you get better. Failure will teach you how to get better at things. And that's the one thing with, so many of us work at our homes or work in an office. If, as you said, and as I call it, if the schmeckle hits the fan, I don't think I'm going to need the internet, and I doubt I'll need my computer, but I need a skill that somebody else, that I can barter with. And, simple things. How do I tan a hide? I mean, we're talking about skills that are long gone, that haven't been around for years. Go to one of these frontiersman type, or these one of these things that they put together. Learn how to tan hides. Learn how to make a spear. I mean, these are skills that we seem to have lost, but it may be skills you might need.
And what makes it nice is that one thing that you have, someone else may not have, that you can actually work together to help each other, because, you can't learn everything, but it makes it nice that someone else that has something that you don't have, you really can work in a good team.
Well, absolutely. I think that there's some rules out there, and I think that we call them the rule of threes. Basically, the rule, and this kind of goes along with what you're talking about. The rule of threes. Basically, you can live for 3 minutes without oxygen. You can live for 3 days without water. You can live for 3 weeks without food. You can live 3 months without other people. So, when you're talking about community, at some point you're going to need other people around you. And I know that when I talk with friends and we get together and we talk about, okay, what can you bring? What can you bring? Because you're absolutely right, Barry. There are skills that no one person can do all the skills. You got to have hunter-gatherers. You got to have, people who can. You got to have people who can prepare meats. And who can do clothing, who can sew. There's all kinds of skills that people have to have. And, you got to make get your friends around that, to start to build your community together. And, that's the one thing that, we've done at Destiny is we talk about this stuff. This is open conversation that we have at church. And that is, okay, what skill are you learning these days? Or it's funny because some of these young kids will come up to me and they'll say, look what I built, whether it be a trap or snare or whether it be a makeshift bow and arrow. I mean, these kids are coming up to you now and they're learning skills too. So, and that's probably what encourages me more than anything is to see the young kids who are trying to learn these skills.
Yeah,
so
that is exciting because there's, I remember when I lived in Iowa that everybody pretty much back then had like a root cellar, and now you don't see those anymore. And I would like to get one. Of course, I just don't have a hill, so I'd have to dig something. So that's going to be having to find a backhoe. But the idea is that here's an idea. I know. With chickens we have, we're getting about, maybe a dozen chicken eggs every day, about that, give or take. Of course, during this wintertime, it slows a little more, but if you coat it with vegetable oil and you put it like in a cool, dry place, like let's say a root cellar, you can get up to 9 months of storage out of them.
Absolutely. And most people don't know that.
No.
And those are the kind of skills, if my grandparents were still around today, they'd probably teach me. But those are the things that we have to resurrect by study and by trial and error. How to do those kind of skills. I was talking with a gentleman the other day who said that he lives up in the mountains, but he works down in the city, down in Fort Collins, Colorado. And he said, well, if I had to get from my house get from work up to my house, this is the route I'd take, and we were just talking a little bit about it. I said, okay, so what's your sign going to say? And he said, what do you mean, my sign? I said, well, first of all, you got to go through the city. And what better way to get through a city than to look like a panhandler?
Yeah.
So, if you can dress in kind of grungy clothes and have a sign that says, we'll work for food, nobody's going to bother you, and you will get through the city a lot quicker that way.
Good idea.
And then he was figuring, well, I could probably walk 10 miles a day. And I said, well, how are you going to do that when you're walking across fields and at night? He said, well, I'm not going to. I'm going to walk along the side of the road during the day. I said, well, that makes no sense, because so will, everybody else in that city. And where do you think the bad guys are going to be preying on the sheep? They're going to be after them who are, walking down the street. So you might get 5 miles a day walking in the backcountry at night. And if you've ever walked at night with no flashlight, you don't go very fast.
That's
so
true.
It kind of changes his thought a little bit on how many miles he can make in a day. And if he makes more, great. If he doesn't, at least he's prepared now to say, he's only talking about maybe 50 miles. Well, he realized it's probably going to take him 10 days to get home.
I guess one thing that really frustrates me more than anything is Christians who know what's going on, they hear what's going on, but will not do anything. I mean, they will literally, Brian, they will just sit there and look at you like deer in the headlights going, you're crazy you should be trusting God. Well, how many people in the Bible, Joseph, Noah, and others, prepared? God told them, hey, things are happening. God is warning us now ahead of time. He told Joseph with Pharaoh in the dreams, hey, this is going to happen. He gave the interpretation of what was going to happen. 7 years of plenty, 7 years of famine. He told Moses, hey, get this ready. He's telling us. We're seeing the news stories. Of course, we're seeing, stuff even close home now. It's no longer overseas. Stuff is happening here. So those who do not listen, I don't know what to tell them, Brian. I mean, what do you tell somebody that does not, they see the signs, but they won't do anything?
Well, Barry, I think there's a saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink.
True.
I think you're hitting it right on the head, especially with, our fellow Christians. And I hear the same thing, too, is that, one, God's going to take care of me. But, like you said, open your Bible and read it. Like I said, Noah, God told him to build the ark. He didn't build it for him. Like you used, Joseph. God told Joseph, take your family and move. He didn't just move them for him. He didn't set the wall up around them so they could stay in the comfort of where they were and say, could God have done that? Yes, he can. He's all powerful. He can do that. But that's not how he functions. And what you say to him is say, do you believe that God is the same now as he was in the beginning? And they'll all say yes. Is God the same as he always been? Yes, he is. Then why do you think he's going to change for you?
Yeah, I know. And here's a perfect example. I know some people out there that actually have 401ks. I don't, but they do. And they said, well, you know what? If it goes down, then I guess we'll go down with it. And I'm like, wait a second here. If you think that something could happen, why not take some out, and maybe put some to like your food, if you don't have any, or water, maybe even gold and silver, because Brian, I mean, you could put some gold pieces in your pants if you had to walk and no one would know where you had it. But if you had to go buy something, I understand, hey, an ounce of gold is, I think, $13.76 or something like that today. But the idea is, they had a guy on last week, and I called this radio station here in town. They had a guy that was a financial advisor for this credit union, and he was talking about 401ks. And I said, what makes me so mad is that's money that you say that is mine, but I can't have it. And what gets me is that 401k I can only take out because of hardship and stuff like that. And I said, a guy just told me that he already had the government twice take his pension out. Twice now. And the guy says, well, that won't happen. There's these laws and stuff. I'm like, okay, and who's not listening to the laws now? And I guess what so the coming full circle is this. So these people that tell me, well, I guess I'll ride with my 401k. Like, if you think it might happen, it may go down, why not invest in some gold and silver, some food, maybe even, here's a novel idea. Go to a rancher, buy a cheap gas tank that might be 100 gallons and fill it up.
Get a cow.
Yeah, get a cow.
For them. The thing is that you talk to any financial advisor, then what will they tell you? Diversify, diversify,
Yep.
diversify, right? Then why don't they teach you to diversify? Okay? Why do I have to put all my money for retirement or for whatever reason into the dollar system, into the Federal Reserve banking system, whether it's Federal Reserve or not? Basically, when you put it into dollars and in the paper, it's all based in that area. But they won't tell you to go out and buy physical gold. Wasn't it Ben Bernanke just came out, it's probably been about 8 or 9 months ago, he even came out and said, well, gold's nothing more than a commodity. You're foolish to put it in there. But I agree with you, Barry. I think you need to diversify. You should have money. Put your money into gold. Put your money into silver. Put some money into food. Put your money into skills that you're going to want to learn. Skills will take you a long, long way. If you ended up into a bartering situation, if you have a skill that we can barter with, you and I are going to be able to do some commerce together. But it's those without skills who are going to be the ones that are going to come begging and without anything to offer. I gave an example. I gave a talk one time when it came to gold and silver. And I said, you know what? Think about this for a minute. When you mentioned that gold is at like $1,370 or whatever, it's somewhere right up in there. $1,370. Okay, we've gotten ourselves in this mindset that everything's based on dollars. But you know what? If you switch it around and say, well, it's based on gold again. Let's make our own gold standard.
Yeah.
Well, basically a $20 gold piece still buys the same amount of a very good tailored suit as it did in the 30s when you could buy a tailored suit for a $20 gold piece.
That's true.
Granted, it hasn't changed. The value of the gold really hasn't changed. So if you put it as that in those terms, what changed? What actually changed is the value of the dollar has changed. It's hard for people to grasp that concept, and that's because we have been off the gold standard for so long that we actually think that we are on the dollar standard, and our elites, our power elites, and our government people have taught us that. I mean, you go to schools and they teach you it's all based on dollars. But the thing is economies that do not have a true value, which we don't anymore, gradually falter, and they will go down because I like to give an example with people. I'll go out and take a dollar bill, and I'll take a piece of paper, and I'll cut a piece of paper the same size as a dollar bill, put it in front of them, and ask them, well, which is worth more?
Uh-huh.
And their answer is always the dollar. Well, why? Well, because it says a dollar. So if I write $1 on this piece of paper, which you can't do, but if I wrote $1 on this piece of paper, does it make it the same as that one? Well, no, it's still just a piece of paper. Aren't they both just a piece of paper?
You're making too much good sense.
So, and then you were talking about, when we were talking about 401ks and confiscation and things like that, don't forget that was it 33 when FDR confiscated gold, and he made people turn their gold in under executive order, and they actually went to banks and took people's gold right out of their safety deposit boxes.
Yeah.
So don't tell me 1 minute that they wouldn't take your 401k. And how many people have actually looked to see the total dollars in 401ks to see where it's at? don't you think it's kind of strange that the total amount in 401ks across the United States track very closely to the amount of debt that we have? They're close to about $16.5 trillion in 401ks. Our debt is just over 16.5, almost $17 trillion. That kind of makes me think, oh, is that how they're going to want to pay off the debt? Don't forget, there's been some talk lately about the government taking, because what is 401k? It's an IRS tax code, is what it is. Of them taking your 401k and giving you a government annuity. Huh. That kind of sounds to me like Social Security, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know what? And there's an old saying, it's a terrible thing to have your brains in somebody else's head. What I'm saying is you don't think for yourself.
Exactly.
And then people are just, they're like, we got this now thing you hear on commercials and that, hey, I'm the expert. Well, wait a second here. When did you become not a smart person to think for yourself and let someone else think for you?
Mm-hmm. And what's sad about it, Barry, is that I've had to take a lot of coursework in economics, and I look at what's going on today, and I say this violates almost every law in economics. And I remember back in 2000, I used to work at U.S. West at that time.
Okay.
And there were some people kids younger than me that were working there. And this was in like 1999, 2000, or, during the go-go days, as we call it, the technology go-go days.
Yeah.
And I kept telling them, I said, this just doesn't pass the smell test. It doesn't pass the smell test to me. And their answer was, oh, you just don't understand the new economy. And I'd say, think about it for a minute. If I wanted to be an internet company, all I have to do is put a server in my basement, hook up to the internet, and you're going to give me $1 million for that? That's the new economy?
Yeah.
Are we seeing that again today? Whether it be the banking industry or whether it be housing again, whatever it may be, what's the bubble that's going to break? Is it the education? Is it just the amount of dollars we're printing? We have going from bubble to bubble to bubble. And the bursting of the bubbles are happening faster and faster. So, now we can take it back to what Stan and Steve say, or Stan's book, when you read about Amos 8 and how the dollar is the shekel, the value of the shekel changes. Doesn't that begin to sound like bubbles and inflation and things like that? Are we not seeing that kind of stuff today? And I got to tell you, I'm not saying that you throw everything into being, being crazy about it. But I am saying you start to build your emergency plan now, regardless of your age. If you're older, you're going to have a different emergency plan than if you're younger. We all know that younger people may have a better chance of recovery, because of long term. It may not be a financial recovery. It may be just a skills recovery. My daughter, who is at a local college here in a community college, and she and I were talking about college the other day, and she said, well, Dad, should I go on and get a bachelor's degree? And I said, no. Get a technical. Learn skill. My dad, who was here, he says, he's reading stuff where kids with technical backgrounds, and when I'm talking about technical, I'm talking about, tech school type stuff. He says they're actually making more money than these kids coming out with bachelor's degrees because it's something that people want. People are starting to wise up to some of the situations. Not everybody's on the same page, but that'll change.
Well, and the thing with these bachelor's degrees and master's degrees, they don't want you to really learn let's say like math and English. They put that in there, but they want you to learn their philosophies. That's what they're pushing.
Oh, right. Exactly. I look at what some of the classes my daughter took for her, just for an associate's degree, And I wonder sometimes, well, why did you even learn that? It's not going to help you in any way. Couldn't you have done something to just focus on one thing that you really want to know? I even read more and more about people who, let's just say you're starting a business, and they think they need to know a little bit more about accounting. Well, why not just go take an accounting class? I'm not going to earn a degree. Oh, the colleges don't like that, do they? But I'll take an accounting class, or I'll take an economics class. I don't need a degree. Who's one of the richest men in the world? Bill Gates. He never got his degree.
Yeah.
A lot of these guys don't get degrees. What they do is they go to get education. They go to learn things that they need to further their goals. And maybe that's one of the things that more parents need to encourage their children to do. Just learn what you need to get by.
Well, and I'm seeing some of these people with degrees are a glutton for punishment. And what I mean by that is they get to these degrees, they become in management positions and stuff, and then they're working from 6 at night or in the morning till 10 o'clock at night every night. And then they're working weekends. And I'm like, wait a second here. There's more to life than working.
I know. I always tell people that one of the jobs I had at one time is I was an installer for a company, and my work week would go on Thursday. I would leave on an airplane, go somewhere. Who knew where I was going? And I'd work Friday, Saturday, Sunday, get on an airplane on Monday, come home, be home Monday night. Tuesday I'd do paperwork. Wednesday I'd do paperwork. Thursday I'd get on an airplane. And this went on for a better part of 3 years. And, what you end up getting out of that is burned out.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've even thought about this too. I'm a desk jockey right now, which I actually enjoy going and teaching people the skills, the preparation skills and the shooting skills and the self-defense and self-preparation skills. I got to tell you, I enjoy that so much more than sitting here on a keyboard, typing away, doing a spreadsheet or writing a report. You know why? Because it feels like I'm doing something for somebody, and I feel like I'm accomplishing something. Sometimes when you're in corporate America, it just doesn't feel like you accomplish much.
Yeah. Brian, do you have a 10 or 20 count list that, okay, somebody comes in and says, okay, I want to learn what are the basics I need for something. Do you have a list of the do's or don'ts?
I can break it down, really. We'll go into do's and don'ts, but I can break it down into 3 areas you really need to understand.
Okay.
Basically, you better have food, you got to have water, and you got to have shelter. The very basics. And that is whether you are going to be in the city or whether you're going to be in the country, whether you're mobile or whether you are stationary. Those are your 3 very basics that you've got to have. Now, under each one of those, you have to start building a plan that says, okay, how am I going to get food? How am I going to store food? How am I going to make long-term for food? So, once you start to do that, and then water. How am I going to store water? How am I going to get water? How am I going to purify water? And then shelter. How am I going to, whether I'm mobile or whatever it may be, whether I'm in my house or whether I'm mobile, and with tents and stuff like that. When it breaks down into those 3 areas, those are your keys. You've got to have those 3 items to survive. You have to have those. You have to prepare for those 3 items, whether it's long term or whether it's short term. You have to prepare for those 3 items. I got to tell you, Barry, I hear a lot of things. Okay, I hear a lot of people who say, I'm just going to learn how to I'm going to learn how to shoot a gun and have a lot of ammunition.
Yeah,
and I'll just take whatever I want.
Yep.
I hear that a lot. I'm going, no, you won't make it. You just won't make it because, like you said, people are going to join together in their communities, and you'll never make it against a community. So I guess, to expand a little bit more, I would say seek out like-minded people. You know what? There's a lot of us nuts out there. seek them out, and you'll learn things. Learn skills that are going to really push you hard. I mean, if what I would also tell people is get good at something. Get good at something that doesn't require electricity. That doesn't require a tremendous amount of resources. So learn a skill and learn how to do it well, because that's going to come in and be a valuable thing for you. I, for example, the shooting stuff I do, it's a skill, and I can always teach it. But, one of the things I'm teaching myself at this time is how to be a gunsmith. Why? Well, I think it's going to be something that people are going to have to know how to do. That's the skill that I feel like on the side I'm teaching myself how to do. So that's another thing. Get a skill. Let's see. Get your family around you. Get them around them. Get them on board. It's going to be varying. You're going to have varying levels of people on board with you. Understand that. Realize that. But you got to prepare for them too. And then whatever skills you learn, go out and teach it. Teach it to other people. Don't. I like to say, don't hoard that knowledge. Give it to other people. Give what God's given you to learn, and give it to other people. Spread that out there. And I got to tell you another thing, Barry, is a lot of communities have, a lot of the cities and community colleges, they have classes. I know down here in Greeley, the Parks and Recreation will put on little classes for people out at the parks. These are your pretty wilderness parks, and teach you how to do skills. Take advantage of those. They don't cost you anything. Look at little skills that the colleges will teach you. If you don't have anybody with your group that knows anything about medical, get to a basic life support. Get to some EMT classes. You got to learn that stuff. You're going to need it. You asked me what I do for a living. What I do for a living, in a power down situation, I should say, I won't be able to do what I do for a living. That's for darn sure. Yeah. So that what my career is pretty much done. So, that said, what I want to do is I need to have other skill sets too. Let's see. To sit down and say 20 things, one of the biggest things you got to make a decision on, if things go bad, okay, and I don't always like to go there. You prepare for the worst and hope for the best. But let's say it got really bad, and you got to make a decision. Am I staying at home or am I bugging out? Different scenarios in each one of those situations. If I'm bugging out, then I better have stuff ready to bug out. If I'm going to stay at home, then I got to prepare my home for staying at home. I have to read up on how to camouflage my home, which means I'm going to have to make my house look like it's unlivable. So you study up on that. You got to make these decisions and start to plan around those. Do these cost you money? No, they really don't. Because like you and I were saying, a lot of this stuff you have. You just don't throw it away. You might need it. You might need some of them old tires and old refrigerator to throw in your front yard to make it look like it's abandoned.
Yeah. One of the things that my wife and I, we've been praying about is, having a secondary place to go to. And, of course, about a year ago, we moved out of the city into the country, about 4 miles outside of town. But we had thought, okay, if for some reason, because one survivalist said, generally most people in America have only half a tank of gas. And his idea was that you should be more than that far away from people. And what he's saying, so if it takes generally, let's say, a person can go 100 miles on a half tank of gas, you want to be 100 miles away from a major city. That being said, if those, we're not too far from Denver, we're 100 miles north of Denver, so I think there could be an influx of Denver, Fort Collins, and that happening up this way. Mm-hmm. So and I understand that, if you don't understand the signs, you could be trying to go through a parking lot to get to a 100-mile away, place, cabin or so forth. Mm-hmm. And, so those are one of the things, if you want to take I-80, you could be looking at a parking lot. So we've had ideas of, okay, if you take this road and go here and this and that, you can go to underpass. We've had some ideas on back roads because of the major roads. But the thing is, trying to find a place that would be suitable, because, there's like small towns and that. But the thing is, everything beside your house costs money also. So what are your thoughts on that?
I agree with you 100%. Like I said, I don't know if I told you, but I have a cabin up in the mountains that we frequent quite a bit. And Shelley and I go out of our ways to find different routes to get to the cabin. And then, so you have primaries, you have secondaries, and you have multiple secondaries to get there, because any highway, any dirt road could get clogged up. Here I'll give you a tip. On traveling in your car. You should always have a pair of binoculars in your car, because you're going to have to be able to look miles ahead to see if there's a roadblock up there. What's causing a traffic jam coming up? Can I get off here, off the highway here? Most people. I have a very good friend that has his bug out location roughly about three hours east of where I live. He's a flatlander, so that's what he likes.
Okay.
And I asked him one day, I said, "Do you have binoculars?" "No." "Why?" "Well, you're driving out there. You have to look. You have to see what's going on out there." One of the things I do, Barry, and I carry with me almost all the time, is I carry a bag with me at all times.
Mm-hmm.
And in that, I have my binoculars, I have my first aid kits, and I have little water straws and things like that. Those pure water purification straws. I have some high protein bars and things like that I carry in that bag. It's with me at all times. I've bought for all my kids. Whenever they travel, you live out here. You always carry a sleeping bag in your car. Mm-hmm. Even in the summer. I've bought for all my kids a bag that has 10 days of food in it, and water purification, and wind-up radios, AM, FM radios with shortwave, and it has flashlights. It runs off a little crank. So they each have one of those. They have the little, those little chainsaws that you can get with the rings and stuff like that. So whenever they travel, they throw that. That's one of the first things that goes in their car. Mm-hmm. Even on good times, it's because how you train yourself is how you're going to react in a bad situation. So I'm glad to see that they've trained themselves to throw that bag in the car. I know it's there. I can go. At least with them, they can live for 10 days with what they're carrying. I would suggest to a number of the listeners that if you can get on one of these companies that will provide you a regular supply of feed, freeze-dried type foods, for a very little investment on a monthly basis, you can do that. You can start to build your stores up. That they'll start sending you. And I suggest freeze dried over the dehydrated, because they'll last longer, and they have, honestly, I think they have a better taste. Yeah. But I think that as far as preparing goes, just like the old 401k guys used to say, there's no better time than to start right now.
Yeah.
Well, there's no better time than to start right now. You've got to get a little bit at a time, and get out and try things. Like you said when we started this conversation, you go up in the mountains, and guess what? You go out there and you try something. You get out a book that says, this is how I make a trap or snare. You make it, and you take a stick and you see if it works. You practice. That's how you get your skills. I guarantee you, things aren't going to work the first time. But you're better while the situations are the way they are right now. Now's the time to practice. And I'll tell you a story about. I like to tell a story. I think it's pretty funny.
Okay.
When it comes to traps and snares. When I took one of my survival courses that I took when I was in college, one of the things we had to do is we had to build 3 traps and snares in order to get through the class. And this buddy and I, we were kind of the smart Alex in the class. That should surprise you. But we built miniature traps and snares. I'm telling you, these were working models of traps and snares. They might have caught a cricket. But we had to make 3. We made 2 traps and snares that were working models. And when our teacher asked us, well, where's your 3rd one? We took one of the traps and snares and tossed it underneath a tree, and a log that probably weighed about 150 pounds came crashing out of the tree. And he looked at us and he just said, don't set that up again. So, and I bring that up because, models work.
Yeah.
Practice with the little stuff. And then the big stuff will work just fine. That's not the hard part. But, if you do decide you want to do traps and snares in the mountains, don't leave them set up because, they work. They really work quite well. But, get out. You probably have people who are, from the cities, or you have, people who are listeners who are, back east or whatever. Get out. Get away from the town. Go into the parks and learn something. You got to start now, and practice, and you'll get good at it. It just takes time.
Brian, as the last few minutes here, what's your gut feeling on time-wise? I know we can't stamp and say, okay, a year from now, I believe this is going to happen, but do you feel like things are pretty close that things could happen?
I really do. It's just, let's look at what's happening these days. I mean, the NSA thing, the IRS deal, all these scandals that are going on. What is it doing? It's destroying any trust that the people any remaining trust that the people may have had in our leadership. Okay, it's destroying it. Do I think things are going to happen? Yes. And this is the only advice I think I could really give on signs that most people who are not reading their Bibles and understanding that. I say watch the cities. Watch the cities, because that's where most of your entitlement people live. And I'm going to tell you, I would watch these cities in particular. I'd watch Detroit. I'd watch Philadelphia. I'd watch Atlanta. I'd watch Chicago. And I'd watch L.A. Why? If you look back in history, those 5 cities have always lit up first. Let's go back to the 60s. We can talk about all the riots that happened out of those cities. So watch those cities. When things start to happen there, you better start moving things and get ready to go, because I think then it'll just start to steamroll.
Yeah,
and like you said, getting to the show, that you mentioned about the pastor down in Texas who is working with the Muslim Brotherhood. Well, pretty much those cities have large Muslim communities too.
Yeah, I have an aunt that lives in outside of Chicago. It's close enough where you can look right down the power lines and see Sears Tower right downtown Chicago. And it's sad because she has no clue what's going on. She got rid of all her guns. Any silver or gold she had when her husband passed, that's gone too. What can you do? You can't tell somebody. And one day, when things get bad, I mean, Chicago, when she used to live where she lives like on the southeast side of Chicago. Of course, the town has now grown up so many years after. She's been living in the same place for like 30 years. So the idea of her just fleeing, well, you're looking at miles and miles of city beyond where she's at now. So, I think if a person's in a city, it might be wise to start looking for a place outside of town, which we did. Of course, Cheyenne's only 50,000 people. It's nothing to walk outside and see a deer not too far outside of Cheyenne or Antelope.
Right.
But we do have gang members, and they're probably not as tough as maybe Los Angeles, but they're there. And so being outside of town...
Barry, the book that everybody reads, Patriots. If you go back and look at that, that's where those people came out of. They came out of Chicago in that book. And I've read all 3 of the series. and which tells you different scenarios that these people had to go through in order to make their way to their location, their retreat up in Idaho. And some of these people took almost 3 years to get from Chicago to Idaho. And what it reminds me of, kind of reminds me of Lewis and Clark and how long it took those people to travel across the country by foot. Could it be that in our future holds that kind of travel again? Don't know.
Yeah, and they only have Sacagawea with them either.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think there's some signs that people can watch, and on the side where people are not reading their Bibles or not understanding, I got to tell you, when I took the class from Steve and Stan, the Bible opened up to me, and that's what they provide in their books. I was one of those who read it and go, "Oh, that's nice. Who are these people?"
Yeah.
And when they took me through their class and their through their book, and it opened up to me, it became clear to me. Oh, now when I read the Bible, it's like, okay, I understand this. I can make heads or tails of it now. So my hat's off to those guys. They're brilliant.
Yeah, and people can definitely listen to those shows if the people actually on the main website endtimetalkradio.com, click on YouTube. You can find In Defense of a Nation and also America in the Bible with Stephen or Stan Grant. When I read their books, it hit me like lightning. I'm like, are you serious? And then of course last week, I'm just getting flack from people because it's funny how Stephen says if it's in the Bible, most people won't believe it. You can make something up and people will believe that. But I was reading in Ezekiel, and I don't have the scripture verse. That might have been around chapter 18 through 23, somewhere in there. But it says the house of Israel shall never return to the land of Israel. And I'm telling my wife, it's right there.
Right.
And
right.
People have to go listen to those shows. You have to really listen to it. Brian, this has been great tonight. Can I have you talk about what is going on and mention at this time what is happening with the 8 counties that want to form the 51st state according to what knowledge you might know?
A number of the county commissioners within the state of Colorado, specifically those 8 states in north and northeastern Colorado, they're all rural communities, and a number of the counties, especially Weld County, provides a tremendous amount of money through the oil and gas industry that we have here to the cities. And as a matter of fact, I believe Weld County provides about 70% of all the education funds for the state of Colorado through the oil and gas industry. And what's happened lately is the governor just signed a law that taxes all the rural communities at a higher level for renewable energies. And I think that was the one thing that's kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, saying, well, we're already providing you everything. Now you want more of our money for providing you what you have, people in the city. So what they've decided to do is to go the track that West Virginia took when Virginia was one big state at one time, and then they separated with West Virginia. And believe you me, it's quite a process to go through. They're going to have to get approval, one, from the vote of the people in the state of Colorado. Do I think that it will pass? I think that the rural communities within Colorado will probably overwhelmingly vote for it. I think the cities will vote against it because they don't want to get rid of their bread and butter. Mm-hmm. And then once that happens, then the federal legislation, the Congress and the Congress has to vote as to whether they will create a 51st state within the United States. Probably has a pretty good chance that that's happening if conservative people can take control of Congress. Regardless of whether it happens or not, I think that what I like about it is I think that the counties that have decided to do this are sending a clear message to the state of Colorado in Denver. You know, the the state government in Denver. We're tired of your shenanigans. We don't agree with anything that you're doing, and we're getting fed up with it. I don't know how they're going to take it, but this is the part on the politics side that actually makes it fun. Mm-hmm. when real things are happening.
Yeah.
It's not these voting on these guys that are going to go to Washington D.C. and completely turn themselves around in circles. But no, I'm going to stay on top of this. I will continue to communicate with the county commissioners here in Weld County to see where it's going. I'm all for it. I mean, up till now, I was thinking of moving to Wyoming myself.
Well, you guys are only
That's all you need is another greenie up in Wyoming, right?
Hey, we'll take you, though, especially more conservative people. But, Weld County is just 11 miles south of us. So it's, this is reality of where we're at. I mean, I understand we're a county of separation, but the reality is it's only 11 miles away. It's not like someone in California listening to this. This is something that's interesting. And maybe as things heat up, Brian, I can have you come back on and talk about this and kind of see what's going on. Now, someone I talked to out of Wellington, they thought that there were some counties in Nebraska and Kansas that might be looking to join up. Have you heard that?
No, I haven't, but that sounds very interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
I didn't realize that. Well, I guess Nebraska's been pretty unhappy with what things have been going on back in Omaha, and I can see parts of western Kansas being unhappy with some of the things that go on in Topeka. So, does it surprise me? Not really.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I got to tell you though, having been around a long time and grown up in western Colorado, there was talk about this happening in western Colorado at one time, where western Colorado and eastern Utah would come together, and it's a long, hard road to make this kind of stuff happen.
Yeah, well, determination there can make things happen that normally wouldn't happen, but
right.
Well,
you gotta get behind it and see, and try to push this stuff through. If for anything, if they see that the people are behind it, maybe Denver, Topeka, and Omaha will change their ways, or Lincoln. I'm not sure which is the Nebraska anymore.
When I listen to the local station here, that actually reaches all the way to Denver and out to McConaughey, Lake McConaughey, Nebraska, and it's about 100 miles either way, all around in the circle. There are a lot of people that are calling the station. They're very disgruntled with even Wyoming politics, because one guy called up last week and said Wyoming, and I'm going to say 10 years ago, was number 7 on about a 50 that was almost, on the top of freedom. But because of all the different taxes and everything they'll keep throwing on us, now it's put us at 37 for freedom.
Barry, what's interesting, I read a book and I called Malone La Bay, which is about Wyoming.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fictional book, but it is what I like about it is it has a plan in it on how to take back a state for conservative values. And I always encourage people to read that book, because I think it lays the groundwork on how to take a state back. And it is county by county. It takes work. And, we've got to work together in order to turn these states back into, what God wanted us to be, and, doing everything for Him. And, so it takes work, but I encourage people to read that book. I believe it's written by Boston Tea Party. Mm-hmm. So if you get a chance, pick that one up. But it has a very good plan in it.
You'll think this is kind of funny, but my brother's wife is actually one of the county commissioners here in Laramie County. And when I was talking to the Tea Party commissioner here this weekend, and because from the voting and stuff, she didn't quite understand, because she was voting from her college, how they taught her. And now she's gained experience through all these different more conservative people, she's actually is looking at voting against UDC codes up here in the county, which is that Agenda 21 stuff. So things are definitely changing up here. We're looking at hopefully getting Matt Mead, our governor, out, and we want to have Peter Haynes in. He's a black man. He's a born-again Christian man. He has his own ranch and business here in town, and he's like all for gun rights and your freedom. And I mean, so we could see northern Colorado and Wyoming here, maybe if nothing else, being a lot closer than we used to be.
That's why my cabin sits right on the Colorado-Wyoming border.
Oh, okay.
I'm really close by you.
Oh, okay. Well, hey, Brian, this has been great having you on.
Well, thank you, Barry. I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time to get hold of me and ask me to do this. I really enjoyed it, and I really hope that some of the message gets out there, and I'd be happy to come back at any time.
Anything else you want to leave with the people out there?
The only thing I can say is keep your eyes open, or keep your powder dry, and that means just folks, you got to wake up, you got to see what's happening, and just do all you can. Let's keep things. Let's be peaceful, and let's get ready, because who knows what's going to happen in our future. Only God can tell us what's going to happen, and He's already telling us. So wake up.